Good morning, students, and happy Monday. Today we're going to be learning how to divide decimals by whole numbers, just like we've been doing before, except this time you're going to use placeholders. And I'm going to show you what that means. Placeholders are zeros that must be used because we cannot move our decimal. So after you complete your review exercises and speed drills, you can take a look at this example, but I'm going to do the samples with you. So for example, for sample 1, we have 2 into 0.014. And remember, when we're dividing, our decimal goes straight up, so we cannot move this decimal, even if it means we have to place zeros before our answer. So for example, we have 2 into 0. Can 2 fit into 0? No. So we're going to put a 0 here. Can 2 fit into 1? No. So we're going to put a 0 here. But can 2 fit into 14? So because there's a number here, you can't ignore it, but it just doesn't fit into 1 by itself. But 2 does fit into 14, and how many times? So we know that 2 fits into 14 7 times, so we would put a 7 here. And then 2 times 7 is exactly 14. Notice how we would have to add a 0 here. 14 minus 14 is 0, so there's no remainder. And then remember that you put your decimal straight up. So 2 fits into 0.014, 0.007 times. So just like with a regular division, you would put your answer on the correct column. When you have decimals in place, you have to put zeros in between. So before I go on to the second sample, I'm going to show you the difference between having a decimal and not having a decimal. So if this were like this, then we wouldn't have to put zeros. We would just say 2 doesn't fit into 0, it doesn't fit into 1, it does fit into 14, and we would put just a 7. And that is a whole 7. But because we have a decimal here, we have to have placeholders as zeros before we can move our decimal up. So let's move on to our second sample here. We have 3 into 0.132. So let's see if we need any placeholders here. So we know that 3 cannot fit into 1. It is too large. But can 3 fit into 13? Yes. Because the 3 cannot fit into the 1, we have to put a 0 here. But it fits into 13 4 times. And 3 times 4 is 12. This is just like what would be regular division, long division. 1, we bring down our 2 as normal. 3 fits into 12 how many times? 4. And it fits into 12 4 times evenly, so we don't have a remainder. But we do have to put our decimal straight up. So notice how using that placeholder helps us to put the decimal in the correct place. I think we should do one more just in case. So I'm going to do number 1 as well. So for number 1, we have 7 into 0.049. And again, let's use our placeholders when needed. So 7 cannot fit into 0, so we would put a placeholder 0. 7 cannot fit into 4. So we would put another placeholder. But can 7 fit into 49? Yes, 7 fits into 49 7 times. In fact, it fits into 49 exactly 7 times. So we will not have a remainder. And then we would move our decimal up. And here for our language arts, we are going over our 5th part of speech, which are adverbs. And adverbs are like adjectives because they modify. An adjective modifies a noun or a pronoun, but an adverb modifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. So we're going to learn a little bit more about adverbs before we continue writing and learning about how to modify them. So here it says that an adverb is a word that modifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. And here are some examples. She spoke softly. The adverb softly modifies the verb spoke. So just notice, like an adjective describes verbs and nouns, these adverbs are modifying or sort of describing these verbs. Softly spoke. She is very trustworthy. The adverb very modifies the adjective trustworthy. So you can say she is trustworthy and leave it just as that, as an adjective. But you can add this adverb to it. She's very trustworthy. She spoke too hastily. The adverb too modifies the adverb hastily. And again, you could say she spoke hastily, but adding that adverb gives it a little bit of a different meaning. It emphasizes it a little bit more. Also, adverbs answer the questions where, when, how often, and to what extent. So here we have a few adverbs with an arrow pointing to the verb that it's modifying, just like we do with our adjectives. We went downtown. So it is asking where? Downtown. Come for dinner tomorrow. When? Tomorrow. Do your work well. How do you do your work? Well. She frequently scores a goal in soccer. Answering how often? Frequently. It was quite good. To what extent? Quite. Adverbs modify verbs more often than they modify adjectives or other adverbs. So here we have a couple of lists with examples of adverbs that are modifying these verbs. It says here that you should use notebook paper to write some other adverbs, but you don't have to do that. You can write your adverbs down here. Just a few, maybe 2 or 3. So for example, over here we have the verb work. And these are the adverbs that can modify the word or verb work. Hard, efficiently, neatly, expertly. So notice how all of these words can modify this verb. So you can add your own. Maybe, for example, you can add slowly. That would change it. Work slowly. So you can add a couple of your own adverbs down here for each column. For sing, we have joyfully, loudly, melodiously, and well. You can add your own, for example, softly is one. speak softly, kindly, jubilantly, excitedly. One example could be loudly. For our last one says pray often, earnestly, daily, fervently. Let's think of one. Constantly. So notice how many different adverbs can modify a verb to mean something different than if it were just alone. So for look closely, usually gives you a little tip. It says, did you notice that many adverbs end in ly? Check ly words to see if they are adverbs. They probably are. But down here below, it says which of these ly words is an adverb and which is an adjective. So after reading these two sentences, my neighbor is friendly, my neighbor works skillfully, I want you to identify, you can write them right under if you'd like, which one is an adjective and which one is an adverb. And just so you know, you can use these contractions, adj for adjective and adv for adverb. So continuing on with Monday's work, after learning a little bit about how adverbs modify, we're going to continue on to page 93. And it says that adverbs modify verbs most of the time, as we've learned. An adverb that modifies a verb may be before or after the verb it modifies. So we notice this with our adjectives too. Sometimes the adjectives or the describing words come before and sometimes they come after. It may be in the middle of a verb phrase that it modifies, or it may be at the beginning or end of the sentence. So it's just reminding you that the adverb can be anywhere in the sentence, not necessarily before the verb or noun. Or adjective, I mean. So here it says in Think A, in each of the following sentences is an adverb which modifies the verb and tells how. Underline the adverb and draw a small, neat arrow to the verb or verb phrase that it modifies. So just like we did with our adjectives, we're going to do now with our adverbs. So it says here for number 1, David played skillfully upon the harp. So first you're going to find your adverb. Most often it does end in ly, not always, but most of the time. But here we've found our adverb and we've also found the verb that it's modifying, played. So underline the adverb and then drawing a small neat arrow to the verb. Now notice you could say David played upon the harp, but that wouldn't tell you how or to what extent. In this case, adding the adverb skillfully better describes how David played the harp. So you're going to do the same with numbers 2 through 5. Then here on Think B, you're going to underline the adverb which modifies the verb in each of the following sentences. In the blank, write the question that it answers. So you would write, for example, if the question is answering where, when, how often, or to what extent. So we're going to use page 92 to complete numbers 1 through 5, remembering to first underline the adverb and write the question it answers. All of the questions are on page 92. Here for right C, it says very and really. So these two are overused adverbs. Instead of using these words in your writing, replace them with vivid adverbs. From the following list of adverbs, choose two, writing an imaginative sentence for each on notebook paper. So what it wants you to do is use these words. We have usually, deeply, genuinely, exceedingly, and positively. It wants you to use these 5 adverbs in a sentence where you might use very or really, but using these can change it up a little bit. And then after, for remember D, you're just going to circle the correct form. And this is going back to our previous chapter. You're just going to circle which is the correct word in the parentheses, the correct form. So here for your spelling assignment for Monday, we are starting on lesson 18, which is a review of chapters 13 through 17. So you've already learned all of these words. You're just going to review them this week, starting with our first pattern words in chapter 13. So notice here that it says on the bottom, read chapter 7 pattern words. It means chapter 13 pattern words. That is a mistake somehow. So you're going to read chapter 13 pattern words only. So for this page, you are not using all of the lists. You're only going to work on this list right here, the chapter 13 pattern words. And it says, circle the 1-syllable homophone pairs together in blue. So you're going to need a few colored pencils, just blue and red for this one. So over here only, sometimes I get work that all the lists have been adjusted. So just these only. You're going to find the ones that are 1 syllable and then circle them in blue. The 2-syllable homophone pairs in red. So remember that they come in pairs, looking back to chapter 13, like mist, mist, sweet, sweet, and so on. Here you're going to circle and write the correct homophones and complete each of these sentences, and it actually gives you ones to pick here in parentheses. So you're going to choose the right one, the correct spelling, to complete these two, and that will be it for the first page of lesson 18.